My name's Annabelle. I'm 24 and I've got quite a lot of mixes in me. So I am Nigerian, English and German. Some of my hobbies are I like to crochet, so I make a lot of my own clothes. I like reading, writing. Yeah, that's sort of it really. One thing that I wouldn't tell my friends is that I actually do like musical theatre. I pretend not to like it, but I do like it. So my healthcare story began, it was quite recent and it started in October of last year. And I had a friend who was doing or had done egg donation. And it was something that really interested me at the time because I had known family friends that were struggling with being able to naturally conceive. And because my friend had also gone through this experience, it seemed like a really good thing to do at the time. So I signed up to do egg donation, and the actual sign-up process was pretty quick. They just make sure you're a suitable candidate. And then a few months later, I was given the all clear to donate eggs, so I began the process. As I was going through the process, it became evident pretty quickly that they were very interested in, first of all, the fact that I was from a minority background, because they didn't have a lot of donors that were from any sort of background other than white. So they're really interested in my background, which wasn't a problem. And they were also interested in the fact that I had a higher amount of eggs than was normal. Through the whole process, they give you these things called a follicle stimulating hormone, which basically helps your follicles go quicker. So each month, a typical woman will release one egg during their period. This just makes it so that they can get as many as possible at one time. As I was receiving these injections, you just administer them at home. I was experiencing a lot of symptoms to do with pain in my ovaries, weakness, that sort of thing. And on multiple occasions, I let the clinic know what I was experiencing. And they just told me that it was normal, that it was fine. So I trusted them and continued on with the donation. On the day of the egg retrieval, I woke up and I was in extreme pain. I could barely walk. I remember hobbling to the bus, and I got to the clinic where the surgery was being done, the egg retrieval, and I told the doctor that would be doing the egg retrieval. I explained exactly how I was feeling, and again, she reassured me that it was completely normal. So I went through with the egg retrieval, and they told me that they had collected 22 eggs, and the normal amount of eggs to collect is around 5 to 8. So it was way more than they would usually be able to collect. So after that, I went home, and because you're not meant to eat the day before surgery, I was obviously really hungry. I hadn't drank or eaten anything, so I was quite excited to finally be able to eat something. And as soon as I went to take a bite of my food, I had this feeling of what I can only describe as dread, and it felt like my body was just shutting down. I went hot and then I went cold. I was passing out. My vision went, and then I started vomiting. So I called the clinic, and again, they told me that's fine, it's normal. It's probably just the anesthesia that we've given you, just making its way out your system. So I trusted them because they were professionals. Throughout the rest of the day, I just kept experiencing those same symptoms in a cycle over and over again. So we called 999. And a paramedic arrived, and it was a male paramedic. And again, my friends had to sort of tell the paramedic my situation because I couldn't do much talking. I was either on the verge of passing out or throwing up, so I couldn't really speak for myself. And they told him what was going on, that I had just been for egg retrieval, and his first response was to ask me if I was on my period and if I was PMSing. And this was really strange for me for two reasons. First of all, he was a male that was telling me I was on my period, and he just doesn't know me, and I was not on my period. Second of all, I have been on my period for 14 years now. Like, I know what my symptoms are. I wouldn't call an ambulance for PMS symptoms. But then he reluctantly told me to go to hospital, and that night I was admitted to hospital, and I was there for 4 days, and they diagnosed me with hematomas in my ovaries from the needle going in and out from the egg retrieval. I definitely think in terms of the information that they give to potential donors needs to be more thorough, that's for sure. They need to really emphasize the potential risks with donating and not just focus on the positives of donating. I mean, I think at the time I was very trusting of what they said. So I took everything that they said as the whole truth. But looking back, to me, it feels like they were being quite dismissive and that they just wanted to speed the process along. And on top of that, when I told them what I was, diagnosed with at the hospital by doctors, they told me that that was impossible and that couldn't be true. So it was just those sort of reactions that really made me feel like a commodity to them, and that they were more interested in what I could provide for them, i.e. my eggs, than my actual health. So with the hematomas, they were basically caused by it's a really, really small needle that they use in the egg retrieval. And that's because it went in and out so many times, more than what would be usual, so 22 times. It meant that in my ovary, I had internal bleeding, which was essentially what was causing all of my symptoms. So the passing out, the throwing up, that sort of thing. So it meant that in the hospital, I had to be given blood thinners, antibiotics, morphine, and iron tablets to sort of combat that diagnosis. So the egg bank was a private clinic, and then obviously when I was in hospital, that is a public body. And you would think on the surface that the private clinic, because they've got better funding, etc., that they would be more involved in like that patient process, explaining things. But the treatment that I experienced when I went into hospital was so much different. It was so much better. The nurses, you could tell that they genuinely cared. Everything was explained in a way that was much more accessible than it was in the private clinic. I think the support that I received from my family and friends was really important. They would come and visit me every day while I was in hospital. And that was really big for me because if you haven't been in hospital before admitted, I think a big part of it is that it's really lonely, and it's also really scary. There's people around you that are also sick, and you're just you're there on your own. And then also my mum, she was a really, really important part. She would call me and pray for me, and yeah, she was just really helpful throughout the recovery process, just being there for me. So I think those two things definitely helped. In terms of my mental health, it was obviously affected by this whole situation. There was at one point a question of whether the hematomas and my symptoms would affect my fertility, and that was something that was, really, really big for me because it was a lot of unknown, and also I had gone into this process to help others with fertility issues, and then I might have my own fertility issues. So I remember being in the hospital, and I would just cry so much because it was just so overwhelming, everything that was going on. I was in a lot of physical pain, but then I had lots of regrets. And the clinic did offer a therapy session, which I declined because I didn't like that thought of it being of the therapist still being associated with the clinic. A big point for me was that I looked into my reasonings for why I wanted to donate eggs in the first place. And after this experience, having quite a negative experience, I realized that I wasn't doing it for the right reasons, and that I didn't want to donate my eggs to a clinic that wouldn't look after its patients or inform their patients properly. So I began the process of withdrawing my consent to use those eggs, which I think was really important for me because it just helped in my sort of journey towards healing and moving on from that situation, because it just meant that I could completely remove myself from that clinic. So that was something that was really important. And then also just sharing my story with people is also something that's been quite important in helping me move on. So in terms of the process of withdrawing my consent, they definitely make it a lot longer than I would say even signing up to donating your eggs. There was so many steps that I had to go through. So the first step was actually calling the clinic and telling them that I wanted to withdraw my eggs, and then they would put you on a wait list to see the therapist, to speak to her about wanting to do that. And then after that, you then had to sign a form. And then after that, they have to wait 6 months, and then you get a confirmation. Then you need to confirm again that you want your eggs to be destroyed. So it is quite a tedious process, and I haven't actually yet completed that because of the 6 months that you need to wait before they can be destroyed. I think, well, with comparing my two experiences, I think the way that trust is built in healthcare is, through openness and making sure that, the patient is informed about what is going on, how this might affect them. And in addition to that, it's also about believing the patient. That's something that's really important, not just shaking them off for whatever they might say, but saying that it's normal. It's about, doing more than just the bare minimum. It's about really trying to look out for patients. I would say don't take no for an answer. Keep pushing. If you think something is wrong, then make sure that you pursue that, and that you don't let yourself get walked over, and just to remain hopeful and faithful and have a really good support system around you, and you'll be okay. My advice would be 100% research the clinic, and don't just look at the reviews that are from people who are purchasing the eggs. Look at egg donor reviews, and then on top of that, make sure you look at all the side effects, anything that you can think of, and also ask questions before you go into your appointment. Have a list of questions that you can ask them to make sure that you cover anything you can possibly think of. Would be really important before you make that decision.